Hey everybody, welcome to another lesson of learning Japanese. Today we're going to express how to say to do a verb while doing another verb. And to do that we're going to use the form pre-mas form of a verb plus the phrasing nagara plus the second verb, which technically can be in any form. So like the description may imply, this is basically the Japanese equivalent of saying I am doing something while doing something else, such as I am eating while watching TV, or I am listening to music while doing my homework. So pretty much this is just doing two actions simultaneously, concurrently at the same time. But when we're using this construct in the Japanese language, there are some conditions that need to be met in order for us to be able to use this grammatical construct grammatically correct. So the first condition that must be met here is that in the sentence you're using the grammatical construct in, the emphasis of action always has to be on the second verb. So in the English examples that I just mentioned, I am eating while watching TV. For the phrase eating while watching TV, we can see here that the main activity is watching TV and the eating is kind of just the complementary action. Similarly was the second English example that I used, which was listening to music while doing homework. We can see here that doing homework is obviously the main activity, the primary action, and listening to music is just kind of the complementary action that the subject adds on to doing the activity of doing the homework. If we were to swap those two verbs and we made listening to music the main activity, it feels kind of weird to say that doing your homework is the side activity to listening to music. When you say that you're doing homework, there's a sense that most of your attention goes into doing the homework and not into listening music. In the Japanese language, this is even more so that it's technically a rule of the grammatical construct itself. So while in English, while you can technically say I was doing my homework while listening to music, and it does go off naturally without anybody questioning your grammar or whatever, if you were to say the Japanese equivalent of that, that would be kind of weird because it just doesn't make sense. The second condition that must be met for this grammar construct is that the first verb, the complementary verb, must occur in a time frame that is limited to the second verb's duration. So again, using those aforementioned examples, if we're saying eating while watching TV, then the eating has to start and end within the duration of you watching television. If you were to say I was eating while watching TV, then after you finished watching television because you got bored of it, and you turned off the TV and you kept eating, that just kind of contradicts your sentence entirely. So the complementary action must only last in the amount of time that the primary action lasts, and as such, we can't use certain verbs, certain punctual verbs such as to arrive or to come. Those don't really signify a proper duration, so those would not make sense using those in the complementary verb to the primary verb in this grammar construct of doing verb while verbing. And the third and last condition that must be met for this grammar construct is that both of the verbs must be performed by the same person and they must be controllable by the same person. So what this basically means is that we can't use certain verbs that expresses that the subject is not in control of the actions that he or she is doing, and such verbs include die or to forget. In English, we can definitely say that I forgot to do my homework while watching TV. Something like that would make sense, but in the Japanese construct here, we wouldn't be able to use a verb like wasureru, which means to forget, because it's not a controllable verb by the subject. Okay, so those are all the conditions that we need to be aware of. So now let's go into some examples to get a more intuitive idea of this. For our first example sentence, we have the line Ongaku o kikinagara heya o soujiしました. So basically what the sentence is saying is I listen to music while cleaning my room. If we break the sentence down bit by bit, first up we have ongaku, which is going to be music. We have the direct object particle o to mark ongaku as the direct object of a verb, and that verb is going to be kiku, which is to listen, to hear. And here it's in its pre-mas form, which is kiki. Then we have nagara after it, just like the grammar construct demands. So we have kikinagara, which is going to be translated into listen while or listened while. After that, we have the second part of the sentence, and we have heya, which is going to be room. We have o again, which is going to mark room, heya, as the direct object to a verb, and that verb is going to be souji suru. Souji suru is to clean. And here we see that souji is a verbal noun, so after it is the regular verb suru, and we conjugate that into shimashita, which is the past polite tense, because we want this to be in the past tense and we're speaking pretty politely. So if we combine that all together, ongaku o kikinagara heya o souji shimashita, that is going to be I by listening to music while cleaning my room. So here we see that Ongaku o kiku, listening to music, is the first verb action here, and it's going to be the complementary verb action, and souji suru is the primary action. So the main thing that you were doing was cleaning your room, and the complementary side action that you were doing to that was listening to music, which is a very common occurrence. For our next example sentence, we have the line スピーチを練習しながら夕食を調理しました. And basically what this sentence translates to is I was practicing my speech while preparing dinner. If we break this sentence down bit by bit, first up we have speechy, which is going to be speech. We have o, mark the speech as the direct object of the verb that's about to come, which is renshuu suru, and this is a verbal noun. It means to practice. So renshuu is practice. Suru here is going to be in its pre-mas form, which is she. Then we have nagara after she, so it's shinagara. So this is going to translate to practice while. Then for the second part of the sentence, we have yuushoku, which is going to be dinner basically. We have o to mark yuushoku as direct object. We have chouri suru, and this is a verbal noun again. Chouri suru means to prepare basically, and it's almost always used to mean prepare food. So this is basically going to mean prepare dinner. Then we have suru in its past polite tense, which is shimashita, so it's prepared dinner, and we put that together with the first part. So I practiced my speech while preparing dinner. スピーチを練習しながら夕食を調理しました. So again, we can see how the first verb here, which is practicing the speech, is the complementary action to preparing dinner. Though this example is actually a case where I feel like we could switch both of the verbs and it would be just as grammatically correct, because it does sound plausible for practicing your speech to be something important enough to be the primary action, and preparing dinner to sometimes be a menial task that you can just do without really thinking about it. But in this case, we're going to emphasize that preparing dinner is the main activity that needs your attention, and practicing the speech, maybe you've already practiced enough that now you can just recite it without any strong amount of undivided attention or something like that. So for our last example sentence, this is basically the translation of the English example I gave earlier. For our line, we have shokuji shinagara terebi o mimashita. And basically this just means I ate while watching television. We have shokuji suru, which is a verbal noun. Shokuji suru basically means to eat. We have suru in its pre-mas form, so she, and then we have nagara, so shinagara. After that, we have terebi, which means television. We have o to mark television as direct object. We have miru, the verb to watch, to see, in its past polite tense, mimashita. So put that all together, and it is going to be I ate while watching television. Shokuji shinagara terebi o mimashita. And again, this example is probably one that you could just flip, and it would still make sense, because sometimes eating is the main activity, and you could just watch television on the side while eating, which is a pretty important thing that you need to do every day. Okay, so yeah, that is how we use the grammar construct verb in its pre-mas form, plus the phrasing nagara, plus another verb in whatever conjugation that you want to put it in to mean verb while verbing basically. And there are the three conditions that we talked about that need to be met in order for this to be completely grammatically correct, and we did some examples too to give a more intuitive idea of how it works. And yeah.